And I don't know what the defense is exactly going to do, but it strikes me there might be some kind of similarities with the Holmes defense and this defense. I mean, in terms of trying to shift the blame.
Actually, I didn't really give that too much thought, but that's a good point. Like the Holmes case, this is a federal case. It's going to take time. This is a long case. I suspect the Maxwell case will take weeks, if not over a month to try. So maybe into next year before we get the case to the jury for a verdict. Like the Maxwell Holmes case, you have two female defendants. In this case, specifically Maxwell, she's charged with crimes involving sexual misconduct. But what she might do, and we don't know yet, because the defense does not have to ever put forth their defense until trial. By law, they're not required to turn it over to the prosecution or the judge ever. So, and I believe in that system because it allows the defense to keep its information close hold and give the defense his fair day in court. You have to disclose witnesses and other things like that to the judge and the prosecutor, but you don't have to tell them, this is how I'm going to defend my case. What Maxwell might do is say, a female, was victimized by Jeffrey Epstein. The advantage she has here is he's dead. He can't provide testimony. He can't counter what she might say Epstein made her, Maxwell, do. Now, maybe the feds have recordings of Epstein that say otherwise. Maybe they have documentary evidence that show otherwise, but it's going to be very hard to counter that narrative if she does it. But here's the thing, Jan. For that evidence to come in to court, somebody has to say it. So she has to get on the witness stand and say it, or the defense attorneys have to elicit it out of a prosecution witness on cross-examination, which is almost impossible to do. So unless they get someone to put it into evidence, her lawyers cannot argue that in closing argument. That's what some people juries are very keen on this, but most people who don't follow criminal jury trials aren't. In opening arguments, you can say almost anything you want because you're saying, I believe the evidence will show this. If during the trial the evidence doesn't show that, you're not allowed to argue that in closing. And jurors will hear, well, you told me this in opening, and now in closing, you haven't argued that. What happened to the evidence? So it's kind of on the attorneys, and in this case the defense attorneys, to come through and put up evidence as to what they argued in opening statement to make sure they can argue it in closing arguments. And judges won't let them if they don't have evidence to support what they're going to say.
Well, so what is the defense doing now?
Right now, it's the case. So the Maxwell case basically just started. There was jury selection, there was opening statements, and there was the first couple of witnesses for the prosecution. I'm sure the prosecution has dozens of witnesses to go in this case. So that's why I'm saying it's going to take weeks, if not over a month, for the entire case in chief from the prosecution to be submitted. Then it's the defense's turn. Will they do what Kyle Rittenhouse and Elizabeth Holmes did? Will they put their defendant, Maxwell, up on the trial? They don't have to, but they can put up other witnesses. They can go and they have federal subpoena power through the court, and they can subpoena any witness they want. If they wanted to, they can go subpoena Bill Clinton if they have enough cause to bring him into court and say he has evidence that's relevant to my defense. And the unique power.
Why did you use Bill Clinton?
Well, his name's been thrown around a lot in the media about traveling and being friends with Jeffrey Epstein, being on the island with Jeffrey Epstein. Did he ever meet Maxwell? I'm sure they did, but I'm sure the prosecutors have figured that out. But if you're a defense attorney, your job is to find any witness who can say anything that allows you to get the evidence in before the jury so you can argue it in closing. And I'm interested to see who the cast of characters is. Maybe it's Bill Clinton. Maybe it's nobody. Maybe it's high-profile actors. I mean, when you read about this case in the media, and the build-up to this case has been, 3-4 years coming, right? There's a lot of people that have been named in the quote-unquote Jeffrey Epstein world. Just another example of a high-profile person who's in the mix, I'm not saying he did anything wrong, is Bill Gates, Microsoft founder and CEO. These are high president of the United States, founder of one of the richest companies on planet Earth and most prominent companies on planet Earth. And supposedly there's diaries of private clients that we haven't seen. Who's in those diaries? Prince Andrew, we talked about him earlier.
Well, your former boss is on the list.
He's on the list too.
Yeah.
So is there enough evidence, or is there enough cause for a defense attorney or prosecutor even? Same thing, they're in the same boat. They can subpoena all these people if they need to come in and provide relevant testimony. The testimony has to be relevant. You have to show it to be relevant. You can't just, use subpoena power to bring in whoever you want. That's not how it works.
Interesting. So let's jump to the third case now. So there's this interesting nuance. You keep saying that these are federal cases. The Jussie Smollett case is a state case. I don't know why that's specifically important to you. I'm sure you'll tell me in a moment. But why don't you outline, what is the prosecution's case here? And it seems to be, like, again, just sort of looking at it from the outside and having followed it a bit, there seems to be a pretty strong case on the prosecution side here.
And just to remind people, this case has taken 3 years to get to trial, but that's because remember what happened a few years back. Smollett at the time, a few years ago, said they attacked him because Smollett said was a gay black man. And then later on that evening of the alleged attack, Smollett said they put a noose around his neck and made him walk away with it or something like that. Fast forward, that case against the two individuals who Smollett alleged beat him up was dismissed because what the Chicago PD and the Chicago investigative authorities found out was that they say Smollett made the whole thing up. And it quickly unraveled for Jussie Smollett. And we'll get to the media part of this case and why it's so important in a second. But what the Chicago PD came in and said was, basically, not only did we not find any evidence to substantiate your claim that you, Jussie Smollett, were the victim of a hate crime and an assault, we found evidence to suggest that you staged the whole thing. And that took a while to get through the courts. There was a special prosecutor appointed in the state of Chicago or in the city of Chicago for this case because it was so unique and so high profile. And fast forward to today, Jussie Smollett is charged with, I believe, 4 felony charges. And basically the sum total is he's charged with a hoax, staging a crime for the purpose of falsely being identified as a victim is a felony in the state of Chicago. And they've charged him for multiple counts related to that staging of that hoax. And that trial has finally gotten underway in state court in the city of Chicago.
Just the thing that I remember from a few years back was the Chicago police chief basically talking about this case and how because, they essentially mobilized the whole police department around this case, like people not doing a whole bunch of work that, probably should have been done at the time, but instead focusing on figuring out this very high-profile case. And he was very unhappy with that, if I recall.
Yeah, and I think it was a high-profile case, as you said, right? The media glommed onto this case, most of the media threw out any objectivity and credibility in their reporting. And immediately, remember, there's always the presumption of innocence. And I've always said that no matter what you're charged with or how badly you're charged, that's why I was a public defender and a prosecutor, you're innocent until proven guilty. The media jumped in and automatically, because it was Jussie Smollett, who's a famous actor, came and a gay black man, automatically said, no, they did it, Smollett's the victim, and Trump's evil because it was done by people who support Trump. They wanted that narrative so badly to be true that they jumped on it the instant Smollett filed a claim of this hate crime.